Okay. First thing we're going to ask you is just to state your full name and your date and place of birth.
Fred Boggs Franklin, born in Thomaston, Georgia, on January the 24th, 1921.
And when, or tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what you did up until the time you enlisted in the Navy.
I remained in Thomaston and finished R.E. Lee High School in 1937. I was working in a cotton mill part-time there as a floor sweeper. And then I had an opportunity to go into 3 C's. That's the Civilian Conservation Corps. I served 2 years in that as a clerk driver for a sub-district inspector. And when I got out of that, I got a job in the surgeon's office at Fort Mac, CCC's, on the civil service. And I went from there up to the medical department at Fort Mac as a civilian employee. And then I was drafted wasn't drafted, I knew my old number was coming up. I went down and joined the Navy because I didn't want to sleep in the rain. So then when I went in the Navy and I came back, I went as a claims adjuster with the Atlanta Casualty and Surety Company. And from that, I got with the Veterans Administration. And I spent, I guess, 10, 11 years there, and they moved it out of the city. And I went to work for the Department of Public Roads. I stayed there for about 6 months. I had to take a deep cut and grade when I went to the public roads from 11 to a 4. So after 6 months of that, I found me a job with the Department of Public Housing. And I stayed with them until I retired. I had 30-some odd years of service all total. And then I retired in 1979. So I've been retired almost 23 years now.
Now, working and being around Fort McPherson, you said you wanted that didn't entice you to go into the Army, huh?
I could not see sleeping in the rain and on the ground. That's exactly, well, I had already had some active duty, not an active duty, but reserve duty with the Navy. I'd made 1 cruise with them, 2-week summer cruise, and I was going to school and it was interrupted, and so they discharged me. So when I went back Navy.
So you had, when were you in the Naval Reserves then, the first time?
40 and 41, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure of that.
Okay, that's fine. Now, where were you, or what do you remember about the first time you heard about the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor?
We were in boot camp at Norfolk, Virginia, and we got up on Sunday morning, December 11th.
7th.
Yeah, 7th. And we had no idea what we was being called up on a Sunday morning for. And the old skipper, the commanding officer, says, "Gentlemen, we have bad news for you this morning. Pearl Harbor has been attacked." And everybody said, "Where in the hell is Pearl Harbor?" What do you know? And that's where we learned, right there at Pearl Harbor. We cut our boot camp to, by January the, I guess the 4th or 5th, we went aboard the Atlanta. They sent us to the Atlanta, and we were on there from there on.
Tell me a little bit about daily routine in boot camp. What did the training consist of? What was it?
Well, first thing, when we went to, they woke you up at daylight in the morning. You took exercise, and you had breakfast. And then you learn to march. Now, while you're on that, we could walk on water, but they taught us how to march. And routine, but we did not get the full 12 weeks, see. And we were there on November the 20th, and we shipped out January 1st.
You must have been pretty good in boot camp.
Well,
Did you get an honor?
Yeah, I got an honor of that for the honor man of the platoon. That was due to my ROTC training in high school.
Okay.
I did all the drilling and everything. I'd already had the experience in that right out of the high school. So I got the honor of being considered the honor man of the platoon, 310.
Did it happen that you ended up on the Atlanta?
Because they had a recruiting here, you know, the, what's her name? Margaret Mitchell was going to christen it. And they had a drive on for people that wanted to go aboard the Atlanta. And I don't recall how many of us it was down there. I'd say 15 or 20. And we were sworn in by Gene Tunney. And we shipped out directly from here to New York. We stayed over in the receiving ship for a few days. And just the day they told us to wash our sea bags and all, and we had them good and soaking wet. About 30 minutes later, they come along and said, "You guys are going aboard ship." So we carried clothes in wet sea bags over to the Atlanta across from the river. What's the name of the river over there? But from there, from the receiving ship to aboard the Atlanta. And then once we got aboard the Atlanta, they signed us units and all. First thing they wanted to know if had anybody could take shorthand or type. Well, my hand went up. Because I'd had it in high school 2 years, and so I got assigned to the gunnery officer. He was hunting a man, and I was a yeoman striker. The yeoman second class was a boy by the name of Sam Koch, and he was killed. He was standing right next to me.
What did you do? What was your daily duty then on the ship?
I worked in the office typing, taking shorthand, or making up reports. That was because I had that type of expertise. So I never did have to stand in the watches or do any dirty work or swab decks. I sat behind the desk and banged on a typewriter. And consequently, when they assign duties is to post yours on the battle stations, I wound up on the deck above the bridge, what they call the control office, gunnery control up forward, as a telephone talker. I had all the sky lookouts on my line, and I reported directly to the commander, Nicholson.
Now, when the Atlanta sailed from New York, where did you know where you were going when you left New York?
Well, we had some shakedown cruises. We went up to Portland, Maine, and we went out in the bay up there and did a lot of torpedo practice and one thing and another, and gun practice. And next they shipped us out, and we went through the canal, Panama Canal, and on into Pearl Harbor. And I think that was on April the 10th when we got there. I'm not sure that date, but it comes to me. And it was still a lot of oil on the water. The ships were still protruding. And you could see one of the little Jap submarines on the island, Betty Beach it.
Really?
So from there they took us out and we did target practice with planes, dummies, and pulling sleeve, and did shell firing, for ships, distance. And they just give us a routine, and we went through it for day after day after day.
And
We got there in April the 10th, and we went over to Midway Battle, which I think was June 4th to the 6th, I believe was the date. You might be able to verify that. But we were in 3 separate outfits. We had 3 different fleets. In other words, each had a carrier. And we were to around that. But we happened to be the out one, and we did not fire a shell in the Battle of Midway, even though we got credit for it.
Huh.
But we did watch the battle and watch the Yorktown go down and all of that.
So, which carrier was the Atlanta assigned to?
The Hornet.
The Hornet?
I believe it was the Hornet.
What, take us then from Midway forward then.
All right, from Midway, as well as I remember, we went back to Pearl Harbor, and we took a tanker and headed for Tonga Taboo, which is in the South Pacific. And we operated back and forth some down there and did more training and everything. And then we escorted ships into attack on Guadalcanal.
So did the Atlanta, was it the Atlanta there to provide support for the initial landings at Guadalcanal?
We were there on August, I believe, the 7th.
Okay. And
We stayed there, and we shelled the beaches, and we protected the ships as they unloaded. And we did that until November.
was there a whole lot of Japanese activity trying to interrupt the landing of troops?
We had several battles there at night. Different ships that would go back for supplies and refuel. They'd be replaced, and they'd have fights, and when we'd have fights.
Were the did you have much activity against Japanese planes at that point?
A lot of that activity. That was enjoyment for us to watch ours go up and shoot them down and watch them come down in flames. But the sad part was if they shot one of ours and he bailed out, they cut the parachute out from under him.
Really?
Yeah.
So you saw some of this happening, I guess.
Now they use us to bombard the island where they've had a Jap. Instead they get up there and the Marines get tied down and can't go. And we shoot over them into the others, and so they could move up. We did a lot of firing of shells there and a lot of patrolling. And we patrolled the troop ships from the island further south, and I don't remember the name of the island.
Did you know, well, let me rephrase this. When you went on to the Atlanta, did you know any of the other Georgia boys that were on the ship, or did you?
A few.
You did?
A few. They gathered those boys at Margaret Mitchell's full inn. We were all from Georgia.
Uh-huh.
So we got to know one another.
Was there anybody that you knew from your neighborhood or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I was working at Fort Mac at the time.
Right. Do you want to tell us about the night attack on the 13th?
Yes, on the afternoon of the 13th, this afternoon of the 12th, we'd had several air attacks, and we knew the Japs was coming down with a convoy. And they had us patrolling around the island and through the islands there, and it was expected. And it happened sometime early in the morning, about 1 o'clock. And there was something odd about this whole thing. This happened on Friday the 13th of November. We had 13 ships in the convoy that we were in. Had 13 men in each chart. And when I got to the hospital, you know what ward I was in? 13. But I was never in the water. I was just, as I showed you before, the highest most part of the ship except for the crow's nest. And the man in the crow's nest took a shell through there.
Man.
His name was Hollingsworth. And we could feel it. It's an odd feeling. Excuse me.
That's okay.
We were patrolling back and forth up and down there, and somewhere along the line there, one ship we could receive the command change. We all change at one time. But for some reason, that one ship got out of line, and we got kind of separated. But we knew the Japs was down, and we knew the number. They were coming. So the first thing we knew, come over the telephone to the gunnery offices. It was a ship to the port side, very close. It was this Jap destroyer. And just about the time that searchlight came on, we started shooting. We trained all guns, 7 of the 8 turrets we had was trained on it, and we put her down right quick. And then we took 1, 2, then began to take some licks. But it went on pretty good there for a while, and of course, you don't really remember what would happen. The first thing I knew, when the shell hit up to where we were at, it just knocked us all down. And it killed the guy that I worked with right next to me. And that lasted on, and believe it or not, it was 3 of us left in where I was at. One had a shoulder shot about half off, and he couldn't climb down. So we went over and we were going to help him down the ladder. One get below him, one above him. But there was no ladders left. There we were all the way up there. The ladders had been shot away. So we immediately cut the signal halyards, which is the cord you pull up the flags up there. Wrapped him around his shoulders and lowered him down to the main deck. Then we looked at one another and said, who next? Neither one of us would lower the other one. So we decided to climb down. And we came down on a 10-inch water pipe, drain pipe, which was up against the ship, and got down to the main deck. And when I walked down the main deck to the quarterdeck, an officer looked at me and he said, you've been hurt. I said, yes, sir. I don't know how bad. He said, give me a shot, give me 2 shots of Novocaine. And he said, over the side. Fortunately, they put me in a boat.
Wow.
And they loaded several others on there and shoved us off. And the next thing I remember, I was back aboard ship.
Really?
I woke up back aboard ship. And then they began to send out the landing barges from the Guadalcanal to pick us up. And they took us over to the island, and our hospital over there was 2 coconut logs separated. They put your stretcher between that, and they began to pick your lead out and whatever the matter with you. And I wound up with a tobacco sack, old Bull Durham tobacco sack full of lead.
Wow.
Now, I lost it. In transportation somewhere, I lost it. But we were there 2 or 3 days trying to get out, get the aircraft lifted. it took us that long to get to Henderson Field. Because every time we'd go maybe 100 yards, old Pistol Pete up there, he'd fire one single shot down, drop a shell down. And they'd all drag us out, 3 to the ambulance, and stick us over in the jungle. So it took us 2 nights and 3 days, as well as I remember, to get up there.
Wow.
And then they put us on these old Curtiss planes. The early two motor. They had put stretchers inside. It would let down, and it stacked 3 to the stack. And they took us from there down to an island of Efate. And there they took my eye out, sewed me up. And one thing they missed was a broken shoulder blade. It's still broken. They didn't find it until it was too late to put it in it. So from there they put us aboard the Solis. And that's when I discovered this. Because my left leg was all shot up, and I was walking with hand over hand with drain pipe going to the head. Now you know what the head is. That's the John. That's what they call it in the Navy. So when I reached up with this arm, it got me. And I went back to my bunk. And they called the doctor, and he says, he took me right on up to the x-ray, and x-rayed and said, you got a broken shoulder, but it says it's been broke so long, we won't knit. Even though they put me in a cast. But he never did knit. And then from there, where they put us on the Solis, they took us down to Auckland, New Zealand. And I was in the hospital there, and what other minor stuff they did. And they put us aboard the hospital ship, USS Solis, I believe was the name of it. And it took us 17 days to come from there to San Francisco unescorted.
Wow.
And from San Francisco, they made me a glass eye, and they sewed me up and did some more cutting and one thing and another. And my wife came out to see me. She chased me down, and
One evening we went to the show to see Greer Garson and Random Harvest, and there was about 7 guys and me. Every one of them had a patch either on the left or right eye.
So they sent the hospital ship all the way from New Zealand.
it wasn't a hospital ship. It was a cattle boat.
Oh, okay.
They called it a hospital ship.
All the way from New Zealand to San Francisco without escort.
That's right.
Were you scared of
At that time, you just wanted to get home.
Yeah.
It really, to be honest now, I'm not bragging, but it never thought in my mind that we would get sunk. Now why? I don't know.
Yeah.
He didn't mention that when they got hit by the Japanese, when the Japanese ship blasted them, see, within 2 minutes they had no power on the Atlanta, so they just were like a dead duck in the water.
Yeah.
Right.
We got 2 ships that night, though, before it went down.
When did you had not even realized you had been wounded until you got down on the quarterdeck?
That's right. I didn't hurt, and I still have not had a pain.
Really?
Never been bothered with pain.
Interesting.
Now why?
During this, kind of backtracking a little bit,
Okay.
prior to the night battle, how much correspondence had you had with your wife and your family back here in the States?
Very little, because it took so long to get. You had to wait till a ship came back, and it'd be in the ocean, and you'd pick it up off that. They'd pass it over from the ship. They'd send the ship with the mail and all over. Just a regular tanker.
I told you the day we came to the interview, my brother who built the house next door, his wife still lives there, he's passed away. But he was in the same convoy bunch with Frank that night. He was on the Battalbus.
But he was a
What kind of-
supply ship, and he was around the island, but he wasn't in the actual battle, but he was there when it was going on.
But he wrote to me, and all he couldn't tell anything really. He just said Frank's ship's been sunk and we've picked up survivors. I knew it before the Navy ever notified anybody.
Why don't you move over there in that chair next to you? That way we can get you on there too.
Get the better half now.
Let's see.
No, her brother and I, we got together several times while we was out in the ocean. Yeah, I mean, where we'd go in the same port.
Move just a little bit closer. I know y'all hate to be together.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, land, yeah.
And Miss Franklin, if you'll give us your full name.
I'm Doreen Peters Franklin, and I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, September 2nd, 1921.
I married a pharmacy.
Well, you did.
She was naturalized.
Now, you got back to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Then take us there.
All right, San
there.
Francisco, they put me in the ward where there was nothing but eye people. Had eyes out.
Really?
And they treated you there, and when it became complete, by this time it was well, as far as soreness or anything, they sent us over to San Francisco, and to the glass maker, eye maker. And if you've never seen one, and I doubt if you will these days, he takes a tube of glass about the size of your index finger. He puts it over a Bunsen lighter, and he starts that, and he looks in your eye, and he molds that by that glass maker.
Wow.
And then he colors it with other different colors of glass. But it's easily broken. And on the hospital out at Vallejo there, they always have a canteen, you know, where you go and they would sell beer and all. And the Marines were real bad about it. They'd go in there and get to drinking. Those were the eyes. It got down to the matter where they'd lay one on top of the bottle and see who could thump it the furthest. Consequently, it broke a lot of them. And they eliminated that right quick. You just don't know what crazy things go on. But they did. They had Marines there, and they had we saw a lot of the burn boys off of Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
They were in there being treated, and some of them was burnt terrifically. You don't know. I don't see how they'd ever even give them anything that would resemble a face. But yet they survived. It just wasn't their time. So from San Francisco, I spent, when did you come out?
February.
In February. We got there on first day of January, 43. And then when I got transferred, I had put in for a transfer to a hospital in Florida, Jacksonville, closer to be home. And so it came through, and fortunately we were able to come back across the country together.
Wow.
I left her in New Orleans and I went to Jacksonville, and she came to Atlanta. And so after they put me up for a medical survey in Jacksonville and decided I was no longer needed, they discharged me, and she and I got married on 4th of June after I was discharged in April.
People in San Francisco were so nice to help people out, you know, and to entertain you. And the Red Cross worked to get you rooms, and the families would take you out to eat or to the parks or to the Pacific Ocean. You know, they would really, really make you feel at home and make you feel welcome.
Yeah, when I first found out, her mama said, you got to find a place to stay. So I went to the Red Cross, and they gave me the name of a person, and Ms. Nicholson. And she said, you can sleep over here with Bus. And then she called Mrs.
Williams. I stayed with Ms. Williams.
Ms. Williams, a place for her. So I'd go from over there to date her. And I had leave all this time. And we took in San Francisco.
Wow.
What you could go to see in wartime.
Now, when did you find out, Mrs. Franklin, when did you find out that the Atlanta had actually suffered so much damage, and when did you find out then that he was okay?
I got a letter from my brother, one of those, they call it airmail. Yeah, and he sent me one of these, it was like on onion skin, but it was paper thin.
Email, what you call it.
Email something, and he sent that to me. I got it within just
V-mail.
V-mail, yeah, Victory Mail. I got it within 2 weeks after that, but the Navy didn't notify his mother that he had been wounded until the last of December.
Wow.
So I knew it was just a short time. This fellow that he was telling you about that was up there with him that that got killed, Sam Koch, his mother had asked for somebody that knew about the Atlanta and had been on it to write to her. We found it in a Navy magazine, and he wrote to her. And we corresponded, or I corresponded with her for 50 years, and we've kept in touch with Sam's brother. In fact, Sam's brother and his son, named Sam, were here last July for a week with us. So we've been in touch with them all these years. They've been real good friends.
Now, how did you, being a Canadian, end up with a Georgia boy?
Well, my mother and daddy, of course, were Canadians. I was telling her about my daddy was Queen's Own Rifles, and he belonged to Sir Pettit's Queen's Own Rifles group. And he's the one that built Castleloma Castle in Toronto.
Okay.
And so Daddy worked, he was a linotype operator, and he worked for the Toronto Star. And he just got tired of cold weather and decided he'd go work on the Miami Herald. So he got a job with the newspaper in Miami. And of course we went down there. And then in 27, when the hurricane came through, it put the chimney of our house through the car. And Daddy said, we're getting out of here. And so then we came as far as Atlanta. And I've been here ever since.
Wow.
And
you haven't seen this book, have you? You might flip through it. They got one out there.
But I was in nurses training at Crawford Long, and he worked at the medical department at Fort Mac, and so we met through mutual friends.
Oh, okay. Now, what was it like for you to be in Atlanta during this time?
Well, I was working in the hospital at Crawford Long. I was a student there, and I was there for 1.5 years. And then I left the nursing and went to work for Southern Railway, which was nice because when I wanted to go to California, all I had to do was get a ticket on the railway.
Because you were already working for them?
Yes.
Now, how were things different? How would you say, or what were the most noticeable differences in Atlanta between, let's say, before the war and after the war started? What were?
Well, it was just November to December, and then Roosevelt declared war.
Right.
I went from...
so you had just gotten here?
No, in Atlanta.
No. Okay, I see what you're saying.
But you meant when he went overseas. Things that I noticed about in Atlanta.
Yes.
First thing, everybody was rationed. You had to have sugar coupons, gas coupons, a coupon. You had 2 coupons a year, about a pair of shoes. You'd have 2 pairs of shoes a year. And of course, so many of the women and girls and all went to work in the factories and airplane plants and things, So I think everybody really worked in the war effort to do everything they could, saving bacon drippings because they needed the fat. We saved aluminum foil, even from the inside of cigarette packages. All that was donated to the war effort, you know.
This might not be to go in there, but I was working as a claims adjuster for an insurance company. They sent me out to adjust a claim. When I got through talking to the fellow, he looked at me, he said, "How in the hell did you stay out in the Army?"
Because he looked, you know, like he was helping
See,
in the war.
as far as you're concerned, you can't see anything wrong with me.
Right, right.
But then when you look at my hand and see all that meat shot off, shoulder busted, leg, I got it all on the left side. Got one big piece on the right side.
When we were going through things the other night, he had that picture, you know, with all the time he went and gave blood at the Red Cross. And a lot of people walking the streets of Atlanta would come up to him and want to know why he wasn't in service. Because he was home, you see,
So
before the war was really over.
as far as appearances, there was no change.
How did you respond to them?
It didn't bother me.
I mean,
I've been there and back.
yeah.
I think it's much the same maybe in today's world. You know, a lot of people, they made a Muslim person, they're sort of antagonistic towards it, see?
Right.
But sometimes we speak when we don't
Don't know.
understand what's going on.
They don't know the whole story.
That's correct. That's correct.
But I can truthfully say that I have had no trouble adjusting to it. I went back to the hospital and had several times on my own since I worked at the insurance company. And had shrapnel removed. And when a piece come up and start hurting, I'd go back and get it. I still got shrapnel in me.
I could beat you playing tennis though, because you couldn't see the ball coming.
You lose your depth perception.
Right.
Yeah, you take a point, make a pin point on that, and then try to close one eye and try to put it back down on it. You can't do it.
Did the Navy work with you? Do you any kind of therapy dealing with the loss of an eye or anything like that before you were discharged?
I didn't need it.
Not before he was
Not
discharged,
bad.
but he would go to, they called him to Birmingham, to the big VA hospital over there.
The VA checked you every so often
Yeah.
to see if your disability was gone or not. I tried to tell them first time, ain't nothing gonna get any better. Ain't no way.
Right, right.
But no kind of special therapy that I know of.
But they sent me over there every so often to examine me. I worked with the VA and did a lot of adjustment in the claims. I worked in the claims department. And I saw a lot of your war stuff come through.
Now, Ms. Franklin, where did you live in Atlanta before y'all married?
Well, after we met, I was living at the nursing home at Crawford Long Hospital. And then when I left there and went to work for Southern Railway, I lived at home with Mother and Daddy.
Which was where?
In Kirkwood.
In Kirkwood.
And I lived in East Point.
In East Point. Did your family put in a victory garden?
I don't remember that we did.
Okay.
I don't know.
We had grapevines and palm trees, but not a victory garden.
Okay.
They didn't have a big yard.
Oh, okay.
Small lot. I'm sure my mom and dad had one, but I couldn't sweat to it.
They always
Of course, they were out in the country.
They were out in the country in Thomaston.
And what did your family do? Did they farm, or what did they do in Thomaston?
My dad mostly was we was so wood a lot of times, but he was a convict guard. He had different jobs.
Okay.
Now the main thing in Thomaston at that time was your cotton mills.
Yeah.
It was a cotton mill town. And I worked at the Peerless Mill for my part of junior and senior year in high school. The high school would let you give up your study period and get out at 1 o'clock. So you go to work at 2, get through at 10, and get home and get to bed by 11:30, back at school at 8 the next morning.
Wow.
But it was to help the family out. And because there were six children in my family.
This didn't have anything to do with my husband, but my daddy thought he would really help the war effort. And he was the greatest one. He worked in Atlanta as a linotype operator, but every Saturday night he would bring home boys off the streets of Atlanta, either in the Air Force or on leave from Benning, paratroopers from Benning. And I can remember at least 3 or 4 men in service sleeping on the dining room floor. Mama would fix them a great big meal, and every weekend we had servicemen that my daddy would bring home off the streets of Atlanta to spend time at home and have a home-cooked meal. And a lot of the guys Mama kept in touch with and wrote to their families, you know, through the years. So everybody pitched in and helped.
You weren't worried about that, were you?
No. She couldn't do better than this. Not when you got 59 years behind you.
Yeah.
Almost.
June the 4th will be 59 years.
Wow. What was the question I was going to ask?
About working for the railroad.
Yeah. What did you do for the railroad?
I worked in the way-building department. Excuse me.
Okay, I'll stop.
Billing department, which is where they loaded the freight, all the freight bills, and so that's where I worked as a filing clerk in the way-bill department. When I went out to California to join him, I left on Saturday morning, and I didn't get to San Francisco till at noon Wednesday because the trains were sidetracked for troop trains and supply trains.
Wow.
And they would sidetrack us and we'd just sit on the train. So it took me Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
You're talking about how the Navy is so technical at times. We rode on that train from San Francisco all the way across and down to Jacksonville, Florida. I got in there about midnight, and I hadn't had a bath in those days. And I went in and got in the shower, but I got cussed out and put to bed right quick. You don't come in here this time of night to take a bath.
Live and learn.
Now, when did you finally get your medical discharge? That was in
April, what's the date?
April 43. April 43, honey. Oh,
Where is it?
date of
We got it here somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's in that stack there. That's all right. It's not. I'm pretty sure it was 43.
Oh, it was April 43.
Oh.
Date.
April 6th of 1943.
April 6.
Now, where were you first on VE Day? You remember?
No.
You remember much about what happened on VJ Day?
I know they signed the treaty on my birthday, September the 2nd.
Really?
But I saw it in the papers at Truman's Museum. Sure did.
Wow. Now, have you been involved in any? Well, let me kind of backtrack a little bit. Did the Atlanta post World War II, obviously, have any reunions?
Yes.
You did.
Well, there was an association going on, and I got some of those upstairs somewhere.
Did you go to some of the reunions?
Yeah. We went out, where was it? To South.
Colorado Springs.
We went to Colorado Springs. We went to several of them. And we had quite a crowd down then, but you think, that's been 60 years ago.
Right.
We also went to Norfolk when they christened the USS Atlanta nuclear submarine.
We weren't
All
aboard
the
yet.
fellows that were in the Atlanta area were invited, and they paid our way up there. And we went with reporters from Atlanta. And, of course, let's see, Andrew Young was there. And who was the senator?
Sam Nunn?
Yes, and his wife. And, of course, we went to the commissioning of the submarine. Then we were invited down into the sub for a tour, and they had a big banquet. And
Did I give y'all a submarine in Atlanta?
Yes, sir, you did. You sure did.
So that was the fellows from Atlanta. And we kept in touch with some of them and their families.
Yeah.
Some of them had already passed.
Have you ever been in the sub?
I've actually been in the Atlanta.
Good for you. Did you look through the periscope? I did. I wanted to see what
Isn't it close quarters walking?
Oh, I tell you what, it takes a special breed to be on that.
you're right.
Yeah.
To
No, I
sleep with this much room between you?
didn't get to look through the periscope because it was in port.
Yeah.
We never left the docks.
Well, we were in port too, but they let it go up,
Oh,
you
did
know,
they?
so they turned it around. So
Oh,
we
that's
could-
neat.
Yeah.
No, I went to the decommissioning.
Oh, you went to the end.
We went to the
saw
commissioning.
The commissioning, you saw
So
that.
y'all saw the beginning of it and I
Yeah.
saw the end of it. So
That
yeah.
finished it, didn't it?
Yeah, I tell you what, it was very depressing to go for the decommissioning. It really was.
I was surprised because, you know, I would think it'd be useful even today.
Well, it's stockpiled somewhere.
Actually, they cut it up.
They cut it up.
Is what they told us. Now, I don't know, they may have stockpiled it, but we were told it was being cut up, which was really
We were glad to have anything back starting World War I, World War II.
On this video that I was telling you about, if you look at that, you'll see that Japanese ship because they've got a lot of footage from the newsreels and one thing or another. And you'll see that Japanese ship when they turn on those spotlights in the USS Atlanta sitting right there. And they're less than a mile apart.
wow.
And they just practically blew them out of the water, those first shells.
The I can't draw a blank. It was a question I was going to ask. You're talking about on the Ballard video, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Well, we need to see if we can find a copy of that. Really good.
You want to let him have one of your copies? He can mail it back to you.
Where is it?
It's in the drawer down here under the TV.
That's all.
I'll
We
get it.
we can look at it later.
But yeah, you wouldn't want to look at it. It takes a long while, but you can take it home and look at it.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. On a daily basis on the Atlanta, what was your uniform? What did y'all wear pretty much for
Dungarees.
dungarees
Mostly.
and the light blue chambray shirts? And that was pretty much
Of course,
standard.
you did have your regular uniform, but
Right.
a day you wear, but I work, mostly was dungarees.
Were you in bunks or in hammocks?
Bunks.
Bunks?
We were so crowded. And at night they put the hammocks in the mess hall.
Really?
Hang on.
I put his
Oh,
name
okay.
right there, but there it is.
Yeah, we'll make a copy of this.
It was optional, I guess, because some of us wore regular old dungarees all the time. But except you on Liberty. You had to put on your dress uniform then.
Had to wear your blues for Liberty, right?
Yeah.
And this is going to seem like an odd question, but it's one that's kind of important to me. What type of shoes did you guys generally wear on a day-to-day basis?
Black slippers,
Really?
what we call slippers.
Just lace up dress shoes, really.
Lace-up dress shoes. And that's what you
Type.
wore pretty
Even
much
when
every
they had
day?
their white uniforms on, they wore it up.
Yeah. Very interesting. And the headwear was the small little white Dixie cup.
Dixie cup,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
you
he
had a
had-
dress uniform, but
Yeah, that was in that one too.
that's your white one there.
He did have a dress cap, but I don't know whether we have a picture of
Yeah,
it or not.
that's the one that was missing on what they have out there, the hat too.
Right. Right.
My daughters wore that out at Halloweens and every other time. That's what they had when the crooks went.
That-
But there's a trick folding that to cut neck piece and getting a square knot. It always had to wind up in a square knot.
It was rolled up and then put around and then done with a square.
Hung down. Always in the way with the job.
He only weighed about 130 pounds when he came out of service because he'd been in the hospital for 6 months. So see, the girls, when they were like 12, 13, they could wear his uniform. Of course, it wasn't long before they outgrew it.
I know you have talked about this before. How many kids and grandkids do you
Tell him, Mama. I never knew how many there's going to be when I come back home on the trip.
Well, we had 2 daughters of our very own. We adopted a daughter, we adopted a son, and we raised about 28 foster children.
Wow.
Our adopted son, fell in a rock wall and got killed when he was, what, 13, 14 years?
14 years old.
14 years old.
Oh, man.
So we've been Mama and Papa, we don't look that bad, do we?
Well, you look great.
The 3 of the boys that we raised,
We still got them.
they're still our sons, and their children, our grandchildren, and their children are our great-grandchildren, because that's all the family they've had. The son that lived across the road, I pointed out his house, he came to live with us when he was 12. He was left in a boarding house at 5 years of age with a suitcase of clothes and a note to please take care of him. They never, ever found his parents, so.
But he never-
Parents he knows.
But he never wanted to be adopted, though.
Well, he could have been, but then we'd have had to give up Tommy. And we had Tommy since he was 11 months old. And see, used to you couldn't be an adoptive parent and a foster parent. I don't think they're that strict anymore. And so when we had a family democratic meeting, and James said, I ain't giving up my little brother to be adopted. So that was the end of that. That's just the way he spoke.
Bill, he's been with us for Lord knows how long.
Yeah, Tommy came and went to church with us Sunday and brought one of his daughters, and so we're close to them. And our adopted daughter lives in Lithium Springs, and she's been with us all her life, and she will be 38 in September.
Wow. Now, I'm going to ask basically just I just have a couple more questions. One is I'm going to ask, what was the best thing the military gave you? It could be a piece of equipment, it could be training, it could be anything. What do you think was the best thing the Navy gave you?
Best training, satisfaction of being there for my country.
On the opposite side of that, what was the worst thing?
What was the worst thing? Boot camp, I guess. Of course, as I said, I was lucky.
Yeah.
So they call you the chief, posted mate there. I mean, that was a job that I got for this thing here. And you told them what to do. But you just, the boss, so he would come around. If he didn't, you got kicked.
Right.
We didn't have any trouble, though. Just a bunch of guys in it, just happy-go-lucky. Didn't have any idea what war was like. It didn't bother us at all. We were going away and kill a few Japs.
I expect a lot of the young people going into service right now feel the same way. It's a job to do. Maybe I can help make the world a safer place to live, and let's get it done. They go in with that attitude. They're young, and they haven't seen a lot of the sad part of life, but life's still beautiful, even when you're getting old, It has been a beautiful life. We've had a wonderful life. We've traveled a lot. We've seen a lot of the world after he retired, and we've met a lot of people. I keep in touch with a lot of the people I met on my trips, from, like I say, Australia to Maine, and so the world's full of good people. It really is. We just don't ever read about them or hear about it on the news.
Right. Now, have you kept in touch with any of the other fellows that were on the Atlanta with you?
A few.
Yeah.
And like this one guy, his son, his brother Milt from Iowa, he and his son, who was named Sam after his brother. Sam was his brother. And so we've been in touch with them all these years. They visited in our home. We've taken them to Stone Mountain, and they've been here several times. We've been to Iowa, helped them get in the hay and look after the pigs.
They put us to work when we got there.
Yeah, so it's been really nice. Uh-huh.
But that was in the days when they took you, we had an old 49 Ford. And it'd take you, looked like a week to get out there.
Yeah.
Wasn't one of these super highways in.
Some of the girls whose boyfriends was on the USS Atlanta, we would meet maybe once a month at Ship Ahoy. I don't even know if the Ship Ahoy is still in Atlanta. But it was a big restaurant, Ship Ahoy, and because our guys were in the Navy, we'd meet there and have lunch and talk about the letters we've gotten, things like that.
I still keep in touch with a few of them, but they're down the way though. See, I wasn't very old.
Right.
And a lot of those guys had already had 8-10 years in service. Yeah, the main body of the crew. The rest of us were boots.
Mm-hmm. What was the funny? Do you have any episode that you recall on ship or in boot camp or anything that was really stood out as being something that was really funny that happened?
I'm trying to think. Offhand, I don't.
That's all right.
I know it happened, but I don't know what it was now.
Leslie, do you have any more questions?
About how many Georgia boys were on the Atlanta?
Well, what was in that group that we went? There was quite a few boys. In fact, they had an enlistment for Georgia boys to go aboard the ship.
You talking about now the state of Georgia or the Atlanta? The state of
On the
Georgia.
Atlanta, how many boys?
From Georgia?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Was it a majority or?
I have seen
I don't
one
think
number
it was-
that said it was high as 70%.
Yeah.
It could have
from all of
been.
the state of Georgia, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It could have been.
Pretty high.
The only time we've ever seen them, though, they had a reunion in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be the Howard Johnson Hotel. It's not anymore. I noticed that when Laura brought us back from your place. I said, well, that's where we had the first reunion. That was the first. No, the first one was at a restaurant in Morrow. And then that one. And then they've had one in Orlando and one in Colorado Springs. And but see, even at Colorado Springs, they had kind of organized with the Juno, survivors of the Juno. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't quite the same it was when it was
You both
the other
said-
places with just all the guys from Atlanta and their
There was
wives.
only a
and families.
handful of Juno survivors.
Very few.
Yeah.
Oh, but that was a different place than when we got some. She got hurt,
Right.
shot up in the battle that we were in, but she was going out with escort, and submarine got her.
A lot of the Atlanta guys were at that commissioning of the the submarine Atlanta in Norfolk, so we were all up there together.
Let me go.
We done talked one of those things